Awesome. Hi, I'm Dave Parry. I've been working in Elixir since shortly after it came out. Just a little note here. I've got that this is a heckler-friendly talk. I'm used to the old school face-to-face meetups. So anybody feeling like, unmuting and saying, that's bullshit, please do your worst. I enjoy the backwards and forwards.
Unfortunately, Richard isn't here, David. So I think you probably.
I know. We chat, Richard and I. He's living in his crocodile farm in Western Australia. Cool. So I've made a new CoreComponents library for Phoenix. It is obviously very early days, very beta, but I have used it on a project myself, eaten my own dog food. And, for some people, the first question is, what is Bulma? It's a surprisingly popular CSS framework. It doesn't get a lot of the attention. A lot of people just use Tailwind by default, certainly in the Elixir world. Tailwind's very popular everywhere else. I don't know what the framework du jour is this week. Maybe it's, maybe who knows? It's the next version of Bootstrap. Or a lot of people I've talked to lately are using Svelte. So, which is part of the justification for why I started this, is that there's nothing wrong with Tailwind, but I like Bulma, and I think it was in the latest Stack Overflow, frameworks that people love versus hate, and Bulma, I think, got the highest mark in terms of CSS frameworks, if not the highest mark, very high. Anyway, so you can certainly go and check it out yourself. I like it for my own pet projects because it makes things nice. Now, why bother? So why bother even making another CoreComponents library? We've got Tailwind built in, and it's really just, it's to me, it's just one thing: radically simpler markup. So I've got a button on the right, which is standard generated out of a sample, phx.new, and that's what you get for a button. And on the left, you have one that just says it's a primary button, and it's a button, which to me, just in terms of legibility and maintainability, is an improvement. But let's look at a bigger example. Okay, so this is a non-trivial example. What I've done here is I've taken out all of the Phoenix specific markup, like Phoenix, PHX ID and all of those sort of things, just so that we can compare apples to apples, and only kept in the class definitions and the other basic stuff. So that's it in Bulma. I think everybody can agree, pretty straightforward, easy to understand. And that's what you get with standard Tailwind. And look, a lot of people whenever I say to people, don't you find it frustrating looking at all of that, like a wall of text? And they're like, no, I like it. I don't understand that. I come from a sort of almost like a modernist graphic design background where, we're really aiming at the opposite of it. I get there's some ideological reasons why you might want to do this, that it's just easier to just like put things together. But to me, this looks like going back to pre-CSS and just using style tags. A little bit better, but still, I find it an issue. So what have I got against Tailwind? Nothing at all. It's obviously, it's given the out-of-the-box experience you have with like Phoenix.new, it's obviously good at what it does, and that's great. But I worry that there aren't more CoreComponents libraries. Now, I think a couple of people have tried to make a Bootstrap CoreComponents library. I don't think it's very popular. There's possibly some private ones that people have made themselves. But I think people just kind of go, yeah, whatever, I'll just use Tailwind. And that, to me, seems wrong, because there are plenty of CSS frameworks out there. And some of them are good, and some of them are bad. Some of them, your company that you're working for might be using So I think it was a good exercise for me to create another core components library that's at least compatible with most of the markup and start using it. It certainly hasn't been easy. There's a couple of things in the questions that I still have at the end, which I'll talk about. But I like the way it's turned out. I get nice clean markup. So I seem to have missed a page. Probably one of those in a different order. At the moment, I haven't put it on hex.pm. There's a convoluted reason why I haven't done that. Mainly because somebody started a BulmaComponents library of 0.001, I think, and he had 2 things in it. And I thought, I went, oh, well, cool, I'll extend it. And then just added everything that I could. And they're really quite a good, they've got quite a few other libraries, but they're obviously busy individuals. The turnaround time on PRs is an issue. So I'll probably change the name of this slightly, which is annoying. But so for the moment, it's only on the GitHub at the moment. And one of the other things that you need to add is there's a Bulma Elixir library that just literally pulls it down from NPM. And there's a couple of short instructions you need to do to get that happening on there. So let's look at an example. So what I'm going to do here is, just excuse me while I go out of full screen. And yes, so this is an example. I was working with, oh God, that's not good. I was working with a startup that was looking for a founder. Didn't work out, but I was saying, well, this is the way I would structure a working web app for them. They had some mock-ups and they wanted to see how it would work. So we have this thing here. You can go and you can register. I haven't actually gotten the database working on this today because I broke everything a couple of weeks ago, and yeah, I only got around to it now. But by and large, it looks pretty good. So a better example of that, though, is, and I'll just have a look in here. I'll boot up Storybook. So Storybook is it's like a style guide that runs live against your current style sheets and shows you what components you can use. So let's go to here. So we go to /storybook. Great. All right. So for those that haven't looked at Storybook, these are the sorts of things you can see on here. And this Storybook is not a complete list. It's not completed for all of the stuff that I've built for the BulmaComponents, but it does have quite a few of them. So you can see here's icons. There's all sorts of different types of buttons, and Bulma has this idea of buttons that are like a primary or a warning or a success or a danger. It has light themes. It's got black and white, monochrome schemes. The idea of small, default, normal, medium, and large, and all of these things outlined, etc., etc. So you can see there's lots of this stuff here, and you can see that the markup for it is really, it's no surprises, which is something I really like, and is a principle that I know Matt's from the Ruby world was like, principle of least surprise, make sure that the developers are happy. The minimum markup to get to the thing that you want. So that's what I've tried to focus on with this. And yeah, but simple. You want a loading thing, you put that there. And this can all just be done with standard Heeks templates. So let's look at another one. Tables. Tables are pretty good. Tables got basic stuff in here, like, you can, that's a default table. This is one with borders. This is one that's got stripes on it. I should probably have a few more examples because one's highlighted and one's striped. This one's a bit narrower. This one you can hover over it, etc. So lots of different styles. I've literally only done a very small amount of these, as you can see. But the storybook part of it is probably the least complete out of the lot. So, but it's nice. And, if you haven't played with storybook, it's really worth having a little bit of a play around in it. I find it a little bit odd sometimes to deal with, but that's okay. I'm sure it seems like it's something that's constantly being worked on. And so this is about 6 months old, this version of Storybook, and who knows, they've changed the whole stick of it. Cool. So I shall just go back to my slides. Here we are. All right, so what's left to do? I haven't used any templating yet. So basically the default when you say Phoenix.new, you generate some stuff, it puts all the Tailwind stuff in place where you want it. There's going to be a bit of work involved in doing that because at the moment, all you can really do is turn Tailwind off and then you can put it all in yourself. So what I really need to do is take some of that stuff and retemplate it so that all the Bulma stuff is marked up, is inserted in the right place. There's not a lot to it. There's a different CSS. There's the inclusion of, it uses SAS. So there's a bit of tooling around SAS to put the right SAS precompilers in place and things like that. But it's not rocket science. It's very similar to the stuff that the Tailwind is already doing. So it shouldn't be too hard. I just have not even looked at it. Also, I have not done any documentation because there was quite a few things to get it even working at all. And the biggest one is the next issue that I've got there. This is kind of chicken and the egg thing, and this is part of the sort of like code smell that I discovered with the way CoreComponents is currently done. CoreComponents is a bloody great big long single file, and that's kind of a code smell in itself. But there's also, it's intimately tied in with the Phoenix version that you have created after the template. And that's because of the sort of slightly unusual way that getText generates itself. It generates, you have to have a backend, which is your backend, which you then fill in with text templates and translations to populate the names of buttons and things like that. So I'm at the moment, there's only one section that needs the or two sections that needs it really heavily, and that is in modals and in some forms. But at the moment, I've just got static text at the moment, which is, of course, terrible. But I've trawled through the documentation for getText and Phoenix, and I really think it's currently, it's either not doable or it's doable in a very strange way. So it probably means I'm going to have to bite the bullet and join the Phoenix dev discussion groups and say, hey, I think we should do this. Yeah, and look, there is a whole shit ton of stuff that I've actually done markup for and done the heaps shortcut so that you can just add stuff in there. I think this next slide, this is basically a short summary of what I've got now, but there is a few things I didn't even bother drilling down for. There's quite a lot of sort of quality of life things that Bulma gives you, like if you want a 2-column layout, there's some very simple things there. And most of that is already in there. Probably I've missed quite a bit because also this year Bulma went from 0.94, which it had been at for like, I think about 4 years, to 1.0, and a whole stack of amazing stuff's been added to it. So yeah, finish the remaining markup in Storybook so that it's a full, complete set. The other chicken and the egg problem I had was that Storybook itself is, of course, dependent on Tailwind, because that's the default for Phoenix. And once again, this is a chicken and the egg problem that sort of says there's something kind of wrong with our system here, that you should be able to put any CSS framework in and should work. I know that's really naive, and CSS has been known to bring grown men to tears, including myself. But yeah, it's something to aim for. And look, the Bulma 1.0 stuff, as I said, they added a heap of new stuff. The biggest thing in particular is Bulma themes, you know, dark themes, light themes, and composable sort of like style sheets that work for, this is my corporate color set, now generate the themes. So that's all very exciting, a little bit outside the scope of what I do, but I just need to, with this library, but I just want to make sure that anything I do is not incompatible with it. So those are the things that I've got to do. And yeah, so now's the bit where I open it up for some questions. The first one I can think of was, will it work with Tailwind? And the answer is maybe. And the reason I say maybe is because while I was building it, some of the stuff that doesn't work, that didn't work yet, such as like, you know, various hover states and disable states when I was building them, they seem to kind of work anyway, as in the Tailwind CSS was doing what it should do and didn't seem to be clobbering over Bulma. But I know it's not a goal of Bulma to be compatible with Tailwind, and it's not a goal of Tailwind to be compatible with Bulma. So I'm expecting there will be trouble. I just haven't seen any yet. So, you know, one of my character flaws is being an eternal optimist. So, yeah.
Isn't it only Dave, if Tailwind classes somehow overlap with Bulma classes?
I had a look through the list of reserved words in like actually defined stuff in Tailwind and Bulma, and for the life of me, I couldn't see anything overlapping, and that's weirdly suspicious because you'd think there'd be some. I don't know.
I'd say the opposite. I'd say they're so different that they're really not gonna overlap.
Yeah, they're probably not going to clash at all. There's probably nothing in common between the two of them. So that's good.
And I guess you could prove that if you can generate a list of all Tailwind classes and all Bulma classes and just compare them for overlap.
Yeah, maybe I'll do a diff on the generated style sheets and pull out all of the defined classes.
I do know. Doesn't your Storybook implementation prove that it does work with Tailwind?
As far as I've gotten, but as I said, my Storybook implementation is only a subset of what even I've built, and there's still a bit more to add. So I'm not crossing my fingers and hoping that that's going to happen. I think I've worked in CSS for too long, and so have you, and so has most of us, to know that being optimistic is a terrible idea in CSS. A couple of people have unmuted their stereo. Mateus. Sorry, not stereo, video.
So one quick question. I don't understand that well the front-end side for Elixir, and I don't have that much experience, but from what I see, it seems that Bulma would be similar to using like Tailwind with like defining your own components, like functional components that you just import a specific module. So what would be the exact like difference between the two of them, and where Bulma would be better than the other?
So you bring up a very good point, and this is an argument that I've had with various front-end people when I said, why don't we use this? And they say, Yeah, but Tailwind's working. And that's a pretty good argument a lot of the time anyway, because why refactor things? But what I see as an anti-pattern in the Tailwind world is that nobody does that. And certainly in the Elixir Phoenix world, in particular, nobody does that. So you get stuff like this. Like this is the actual generated classes that Phoenix gives. And now, certainly, all of that could be defined as a class and look a lot cleaner, but I'll bet you $100 it's going to be very hard to find someone that's done that. So my point is that Bulma already does a lot of this for you and has the sort of paradigms. Probably a good way of looking at this is, let's go to the Bulma site, and they have really quite good documentation there. And you look at the types of things that they've got, like we look at the elements that they have, these type of things. They make a lot of these little sort of like quality of life improvements that make your life, the fact that this is such a small amount of markup, even before you've refined it, right? You might, now obviously anybody working on a long-term thing, they're going to go, well, okay, yeah, we've got like 300 character long CSS definitions, class definitions in our markup. Let's tidy that up a bit. But even the default stuff you're getting is going to be nice and tidy like this, which is not what I see in Tailwind, certainly within Phoenix. So my main goal is just to actually lead by example. So I'm tired of looking at walls of text. I would actually like some nice clean design. That is all. I don't think Bulma is a superior markup framework at all. It's just they seem to have done some really nice things to make life easier for the front-end developer.
I see. Thank you for the explanation.
Yeah, no worries. Rob, did you have anything to ask? Or anyone else?
I did, yes. I did post it in the chat, but I was thinking about how I found Tailwind to be quite educational for me as someone who wasn't very strong on CSS, and particularly with because I was stuck in the IE 6, 7, 11 world for about 16 years of my career. Layout stuff like
I hear you, brother.
Yeah, exactly. Flexbox.
We've seen things, man.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and you can't unsee them, unfortunately. But I found it very helpful in getting layout stuff with Flexbox and CSS Grid going. And I actually, even if I'm styling things by completely by hand, I'll go to the Tailwind docs. But particularly with layout, and I see that there's actually a layout section in those docs there. But yeah, how does Bulma handle layout type things?
So one of the things that's interesting about the time frame that Bulma was introduced is that it was introduced after Flex Grids, and so a lot of the stuff that was, in fact, I think it was introduced just as Flex Grids came out, and then they went, well, we can actually make this 10 times smaller by just chucking out all this other shit. It's like shims and polyfills and whatever, and just use Flex Grids. And so that was, a bit of a radical step back when we were all on IE6 and, IE11. But it's not so much anymore, right? It's like every major browser's got all of these things. So why bring all that baggage with us? Yes, there's a whole stack of people in China that still use Windows NT. Fuck those guys. So that's the thing that I find is interesting. And I agree with you. Tailwind's approach is educational in the same way that I found Bulma's approach, that they just had a slightly more rational view of things because they didn't bring all the old baggage with them, which I think is the strength of Tailwind as well. They just went, oh, look, it's time for something new. Nahum, you had a question.
Yeah. Playing devil's advocate.
Yes.
So you've shown a whole lot of live view functional components that are actually hiding Bulma from us. You could do exactly the same thing with live view and provide not live view with Tailwind and have exactly the same API. We did that with material design.
And it was awful apparently.
Yeah, that's because of material design. It dynamically changes the DOM, and then sometimes it fights with live view.
Yeah, well, look, yeah, that's been my experience with material design as well. But also, yeah, no, you make a really good point, and I think it's very similar to Mateus's point in that couldn't you just write clean markup in the first place and actually pay a bit of the time, pay your CSS style sheets a little bit of love to make them cleaner. And my point is that there's a lot of bog standard stuff that everybody expects to be there, and the way it's implemented at the moment in Phoenix out of the box is, yeah, it's great. Give it to you. It still looks ugly when you look at the code. It doesn't look ugly on screen, just looks ugly in the code. And that's the thing that I'm trying to address. Cool.
I use Bulma for my little side projects and stuff as well, so I'm excited to see what you're doing.
Yeah, me too. I as I said, that one project I worked on, unfortunately, it's not going ahead for various reasons. But I had a lot of fun applying it to that. And I'm really looking forward to getting back into it and using it on my next project. Cool. Any other questions?
I've got one.
Z. Hey.
Hello.
Hey,
let me try and
are you new, by the way? Because I think you just came in late at the beginning there. And hooray if you're a new member.
Yes, yes, I am. But I'm not that side of the world. I'm actually based in Barcelona. So thanks for having me.
Excellent. Cool. My pleasure.
Well, you just triggered something in me, and I've been busy trying to install an NVim plugin that hides, well, toggles basically everything within the class thing. Now, have you thought about that, doing that? So I totally agree. I really like Tailwind, but I always get this kind of horrible, oh my God, there's too much text on my screen whenever I'm looking at it. And have you tried any of these plugins? I haven't.
So
I'm about to.
So it's like an extension for, like, say, Chrome or something that will actually turn off all the class definitions. Is that what you're saying?
No, it's an extension for your IDE, so Vim or Visual Studio Code or stuff like that. So you kind of say toggle, and it collapses all of the classes and makes things super pretty, or gets rid of all of the Tailwind stuff. And I was just wondering.
I have not heard of that. I can totally see the deal. I can see the benefit of that. It's a great idea because, yeah, look, working on really big code bases, you just get cognitive fatigue looking at all those things. I mean, part of the reason I'm not a great fan of React, it's like, which is not popular opinion, I know, is just like what I call angle bracket fatigue. You've got JavaScript in HTML, it's the worst of HTML and the worst of JavaScript. Yeah, look, that's awesome. I will hunt down that extension and try it myself. The alternative
you've encouraged me to hunt one down. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So yes, I was trying to get a plugin working while you're chatting away. It seems to be working with HTML files, but it's not working with Heeks files. This NVim plugin that I just found. So, but maybe I need to go and build something like that. But yeah, I was just wondering whether you'd thought about doing that yourself. Thank you very much for the talk.
No problem.
JV,
cool.
Mateus has
Hey, hello again, Mateus.
Yeah. So one more question. Because you mentioned that it's not pleasing and not good for you to see like a class definition that is like like tens of lines long. But I wonder what would be the story for incremental extension of classes. So like you have a project and your project becomes more and more complex over time, and you need to personalize some areas of your UI. And what would be the story for you, the personalization of Bulma? Because it seems to be the case that it would be inevitable to arise at the same problem over time, right?
Yeah. Look, so you raise a really good point. There are some things. I mean, that's obviously a thing that many people battle with, right? And so, where is it? Oh yeah, look. So one of the things that Bulma has is this whole CSS variables, which is, that's all part of Sass, where you can just change a few things and where are they? There they are. If you need to redefine some things, that's fine. And Sass makes this a lot easier. So I think that's superior for a start. Certainly modern CSS has caught up a lot on Sass, but there's still things Sass does that the modern CSS doesn't do. But that's why I fingers crossed, hope that Tailwind and Bulma might actually not interfere with each other, because that's a really great example. Like I've got this one page where the marketing person has said, if they click that, it goes purple, and that's it, right? And it's only in that one thing, and you want to just go, okay, let me just add it is purple or whatever, right? So, Tailwind's awesome for that stuff, and I would really like it if that you could do that. But your other point is, okay, if we get a whole stack of juniors coming in and they just keep doing that, well, 5 years' time you have a mess. That's software development. Isn't that great? We love that. I mean, give a man a program, frustrate them for a day. Teach a man to program, frustrate them for life. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Cool. Well, great questions, everyone. Been enjoying this a lot. That's pretty much all I've got to say. I think the only other thing that I had on my slides was just the definition. Oh, God, if I closed it, God, I'm an idiot. No, I haven't closed it. Right. Go back to the end. We had questions. All right. So that's it on GitHub, BulmaComponents. I'm at Suriname on everything. If you look for Suriname, you only find me. And yeah, please, forks, issues, and PRs, complaints, rants about how I've left out all of the most important things, please send them to me. Caveats, it is a bit ugly at the moment. We'll do some work on it. Okay, thanks everybody. Daja Hao.